Walk in.
Call the meeting of the Bay County Veterans Affairs Committee to order Tuesday, September 21st, 3 p.m. Roll call, please.
Sure. Today, let's start with Lazars.
Here.
Pergandy. Here. Stewart.
Here.
Eckstein.
Here.
And Begay.
Here.
All present.
Minutes from 7/20/21. There's a couple spelling errors in there, but
Oh, that's right.
I don't want to pick on the secretary too much. It's a tough job.
I don't know if I got them. Did I get them?
Kasmerick.
Oh, it's a name one again.
Kasmarek.
Well, you see,
Probably been misspelled before.
In the
but-
Marine Corps, we weren't required to box with headgear, so those Polish names get me every time. I'm sorry, Mark. I will get better at that. I thought I had it right.
Eckstein's spelled correct.
Kasmerick. I will get better at that Kasmerick. Kasmerick.
I'm sorry, but I did not get the minutes.
I emailed them out last month. It was early on. It was
Oh, last month? Yeah, okay, I read
before the
them.
August meeting.
I have
Yeah,
no
it's early in August they were emailed out.
Those were deleted.
I
Because we
think
didn't meet in
Kasmerick
August.
did that toward the end, miscellaneous, so KAC.
Oh, I did.
That's
Thanks. I missed it in the front, Mark, and got it right in the end. Make a motion, we accept the minutes as read?
it.
I second it.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Citizens input. Nobody called me about coming today. Usually I get a call. Seeing no citizens coming forward, we'll move on. Petitions, communications. Anybody have any petitions or communications? No? Reports, resolutions. And old business. Transportation. I guess more of an update on it. Right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so there is an update. There was a couple items that were asked to be brought up during this meeting, transportation being one of them. Gary, Mark, and myself, we had a meeting with Fred last week and discussed over, various things. What we're essentially going to do is, we're in the process right now of transferring that service to be in-house. So there are some logistic things with phones, some small items that we were clearing up, so there's no disruption in service to the veterans. That being said, that should be able to, things in that nature that we discussed last week should be finalized
MAR.
by Friday, and we should be good to go on that. So we Mark, and then after the meeting with Mr. Zippler, we had an internal meeting to talk about logistically what we're going to do, hours of the phones being open and in line and all that. So we should be in good shape, and from there then we'll work on the policy, I guess, for that, any changes, but to bring that service in-house, there's no need to wait. We can go ahead and proceed with that. So that was the goal of the meeting last week, and we're on pace to finalize pretty soon.
$5 per person.
Background checks and other
That's all,
things.
that is all going to be
Included.
things that will have to be discussed and.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to include as part of the discussion, because in discussions with MMRMA, they have a model policy with regard to your background checks for if you're going to have anybody doing any particular type of transportation for you. So it's not just a background check in terms of a criminal background check with iChat, because they're going to be along with different people that they're transporting, but also there's going to be checks run with the Secretary of State to determine what the status of their license is. And so we're going to have to set up some type of criteria in our policy as to when we want to cut that person off from being a viable volunteer driver, if they have enough points on their record, depending on what type of infractions they have on their record. Going to need to decide where you want to say no-go. So that's going to be within the discretion of the committee, but MMRMA is more than happy to provide you with some guidelines for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to, I guess, add on to Ms. Johnson's comments, this isn't an apples for apples situation. Years ago it was operated as basically a volunteer program, and now, this is the Department of Veteran Affairs, an entity of Bay County. So we're going to be under a different set of rules, if you will, and certain expectations, no different than, anybody else who drives a vehicle for Bay County. There are a lot more regulations and things in place, so it's going to, I mean, to go into depth on a speculation on what a policy could look like, it's not going to be it's not just as easy as just transferring the service in. There's going to be a lot more detail and time taken by employees on our side to make sure everything is going to be finalized and completed the way it should, so.
And also safeguards to put in place with regard to the security of the vehicles, because
Yep.
right now, anybody can take them wherever, whenever, we wouldn't know for what purpose, so we're going to have to be a little bit more vigilant in terms of documenting what mileage is being made, what times they're checking the car, what time they're checking in, and the availability to keys, that type of thing.
We talked about this before, chauffeur license, is that not required?
Not required, because none of the vehicles that we have hold enough passengers that it would trigger that.
When I drove a few years back, I got a chauffeur's license. We weren't sure if we needed one or not, so I did get one at that time, but might have to drive again.
Because I think that the maximum, I don't remember what the maximum seating is in the largest van that we have, but it fell too short
Yeah,
of what would have been required for somebody to get a chauffeur's license. So we're still okay.
And the $5 fee, or have we started that up for trips? And that's a round trip?
That was the intent, so we will evaluate,
Yeah, that's what it means.
upon submission and, ensure that is in fact the case, but that was the intent of the motion, and that was clarified by the committee, so.
Craig, is that a round trip? Is that one person round trip, or what's a round trip to me?
To the hospital and back.
Wouldn't it be picking you up and taking you home? We wouldn't want to leave a veteran there.
Well,
Right.
one person you come, you take to the hospital, then you bring them back. But what if they have to go pick up another person?
That's another trip.
and
That's a round
take
trip.
'em? That's a round
A
trip
round trip is from Bay City to Saginaw and back.
per person.
No,
Per trip.
per trip.
So there may be 3 veterans.
If there's
from
3
Bay City
people in the vehicle, it's one trip. They only get $5.
At one time.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Right.
But like
Yeah,
you
if they
said,
make 2 trips,
yeah, it'd be another
Yeah.
then it's per trip.
Yeah.
Yeah, why are we going to pay them extra for taking 3 people? They're doing the same amount of work as they do with one.
Well, if they have to drop one off and go pick up another because of different time appointments.
that'd be a different trip.
Let me say this while we're on this subject. We are the only county in this state that does this. We have spoiled the veterans in this county. This is ridiculous. What they do in other counties, you want to go to the VA in Saginaw, you show up at the county building in the parking lot, and there's a van that you get in, and it'll take you to Saginaw. And they'll take you at 8 o'clock in the morning, because there ain't no appointments before 8 o'clock in the morning. And then at noon, it'll bring you right back to Bay County. And then another one would go in the afternoon. And so this picking people up at their house, I don't know how we ever got into this.
This is so they actually do it like they did back when we were in the military. Because one bus goes out, and one
That's
bus
it.
comes back.
That's it. And if you don't like that, then make your own arrangements to get transported down there. Drive your own car and put in for your transportation allowance. It's these people are spoiled. And I'm going to tell you, and hopefully that they're still not doing it, I'll bet you there's still people that use our transportation and put a claim in so they get the money. I'll bet you.
Not supposed to.
I mean, this committee can, when we're doing that transportation policy, if you want to pass a policy that says that people get picked up at the county building and dropped off at the county building, you can absolutely do that.
Well, like I said, we've already spoiled everybody in this county, and there will be more gnashing of teeth and whining. Oh my God, I can't get to the county building. Well, why not? Call Dial-A-Ride.
When we started, we had just passed the millage, that 10th of a mill had gone through. We got the vans donated or low cost from the Bay Metro, wherever, from the Sheriff's Department. So You know, I think it was just that they wanted to do as much as they could. And there are veterans that don't have transportation to get here.
And that I don't have a problem with, but there's people taking advantage of this situation.
All righty, any other questions, comments? Emergency relief rules and regulations. Oh, I guess just an update where we're at.
We had discussions last time about the possibility of what we were going to use for definition of indigent. And there is, I mean, unfortunately, we all know, there is no definition of indigent for this entity that is supposed to give relief to indigent veterans. So there was discussion last time about the possibility of simply including the language that indigent is a person so poor and needy that he or she cannot provide the necessities of life, such as food, clothing, decent shelter for him or herself. Unfortunately, that doesn't have a lot of very specific objective parameters for the committee to consider. Another thing that we talked about was making a definition based on the federal poverty level. If you were going to utilize 100%, 138%, 200% of the federal poverty level, that's the level that's generally used when you're looking for things such as whether or not you qualify for SNAP benefits, for Medicaid, you know, things of that nature. And currently, for 2021, the income poverty guideline chart for the state of Michigan, if you have a family the size of one, you are allowed an annual to hit that 200% of the federal poverty guideline, $25,760, which is what about half of the federal programs use. I think that perhaps you as a group are going to have to agree on what objective parameter you want to use in terms of that number. While I like a general definition because it gives a lot more leeway, it also gives a lot more ability to abuse what that definition is, and it gives a lot more opportunity for people to complain. Well, you consider this person indigent, but you didn't consider me, and neither one of us can cover our daily needs. So perhaps a calculation that can also include, in addition to what their income is, what their net worth is. Because you could have someone, and I'm going to use an example that I know isn't applicable here, but for instance, in bankruptcy, okay? You're going to file for bankruptcy because you don't have enough money to pay off your debts. Your assets are not as much as your debt, and so they write off all of your current debts. One thing they do not include in bankruptcy is your retirement benefit. So you could have saved $2.5 million in your retirement account. You're 50 years old, you have $2.5 million in your retirement account. You file for bankruptcy. You are still going to qualify for bankruptcy because they exclude retirement from the bankruptcy calculation. Okay? So in this particular instance, you could have someone who has a very, very low income, but they have high value in assets. So I don't know how far this committee wants to get into making a determination of what constitutes a needy person.
I think we need to include assets also. Now, as an example, if you want to get Medicaid, you're authorized $2,000 in assets. That's it. Now, that's pretty indigent if you got under $2,000 in assets. And I don't think it gets into income, but it would almost have to.
I think that you're going to have to use some formulation of the federal poverty guideline, whether it's 100%, 138%, 200%. I can give you the different federal programs that utilize those guidelines and how much they use, because there is a list of them that are this long, and each of them use a different formula. And, you know, it can give you some guidance to see what some of the different programs are using and how they're setting that mark. I'm more than happy to provide you with the copy of the 2021 federal poverty guidelines so you can have a benchmark to start. But
I don't think we need all of them. I would say probably the 5 lowest is enough.
5 lowest?
Yeah. Well, my personal opinion, and then include the assets. If somebody's got $2.5 million in a retirement account, I don't think they need to get anything from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Use your own money.
Healthy Michigan is like 133, that's for medical care, sort of a sliding scale also. So indigent, we've been trying to deal with indigents for a while. I still haven't asked yet. Now they're doing their budget now, so maybe they can get something done afterwards to maybe define indigent, because we've been asking that question for a while now.
Sure.
And we haven't got
We
the
can
answer.
keep asking it, and we're never going to get an answer. I think we make our own rules, and if somebody bitches about it, tough.
So what I will provide for you, and you guys can think about it amongst yourselves, and you can just email me back directly if you want to let me know. I'll take, a poll basically. When I get those, I'll put those results together, and whatever is the majority opinion, I will put together a proposed guideline. I'll send it up back to you for you guys to think on. If you have changes to that before the meeting, let me know, because that way I'll just have the list of notes and we can go through them one by one. But there's going to have to be a consensus among the committee as to what exact parameters you want to adopt. I can't adopt it for you. It has to be up to you to determine what you want. So at this point, what I'm understanding is that we're going to, you want information on the 5 lowest calculations that are used for federal programs, plus some indication of what their assets are. I don't know what bar you want to put that at with their assets. If you want to set the same asset level as what you do for people who are entitled to burial expenses, I think that's $40,000. Because it adds up relatively quickly. If you own a home, even if it's not a great home, chances are your value is going to be more than $40,000. And it's not going to change the fact that if you're not employed, you still have to pay heating, you still have to pay utilities, you still have to pay, well, in some instances, you still have to pay taxes, and you may not have enough to get by on a daily basis or a monthly basis, even though you have that amount of assets. So, I mean, should you have to lose your home before you're entitled to get benefits from the veterans? Because one of the things that we talk about is paying for utilities. You don't pay for utilities unless you have a home. I mean,
Mark?
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just real quick, for the VA, for pension-wise, on the VA side, net worth is $133,000. That's, you have to be below that and the income guideline, which is, but that's neither here nor there, in order to qualify for a VA pension. So I'm just putting that out there, and I'll provide that information as well if you'd like
Okay,
to.
that would be great.
Just it's $133,000, goes up a little bit every year, just from VA. It does not include your home, your automobile, appliances, that kind of thing. So that's just what VA does.
Heck, I'm pretty much indigent then. I think I'll have to come get some money from you, Mark.
I'll have to refer that to my boss.
Now, you mentioned that $2,000. Well, that's mainly for nursing homes. You have to keep your amount below $2,000.
That's for
You
Medicaid.
have a house, you can have the car.
That's for Medicaid, yeah.
The rest of the bank account can't be more than $2,000.
Correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to say overall, with having these guidelines in writing, it's a fabulous idea. And reading through, it's nice that it is very specific. And to Ms. Johnson's comment, about being objective, I mean, there's specific dates in here. There's a lot of good things that, so when Mark and Gary are receiving these requests, there's specific guidelines for them to use. Not, subjective, it's objective. And what I may do, just a couple small things, I might email Marilyn, I might email you just with very small suggestions. Ultimately, it's up to the committee what, if they were to accept a minor tweak in a word or something like that. But I think overall, dealing with the indigent question will be, nice to get an actual definition, but overall, the policy, it was nice to, again, have such specifics.
Have we talked to any other counties? What do they use?
the ones that I've looked at have used the "a person so poor and needy that they cannot provide for the necessities of life."
So there's no specifics in it?
Correct.
One thing that also that I did note on this, and I think we talked about it the last time we were going over these guidelines with regard to the use of alcohol and drugs, it would be my personal preference to remove that provision just because it's very objective. It says no application will be accepted from any applicant suspected of alcohol or drug use or abuse. I don't know how you objectively make that determination, and if you suspect them of it, are we going to test them to make sure that they aren't, I just see a lot of pitfalls with this particular provision.
Okay, what is the term? No, what, we're suspected? What is
It
it?
says, "No application will be accepted from any applicant suspected of alcohol or drug use or abuse."
So it just uses the word suspected, it doesn't use the word known.
Right, so I suspect that, you know, somebody comes in, I'm not gonna accept your application because I suspect that you may have used marijuana in the past 2 weeks.
Or what about if it were known?
Are we not going to provide
Well, I'm just
veterans?
asking, suspect is not the same.
Well, and again, how do you define known? Are we going to test them, or is it because you've watched them?
Well, if someone applies for a commercial driver's license and needs a physical examination, the examiner can't issue it if they have suspected or known conditions.
Sure, but they,
So there's a suspected is one thing, there's some latitude there, but known is there during the treatment, or is it diagnosis, or?
but we don't require that they divulge that type of medical information to us in detail. And the way this reads, alcohol use, it doesn't say alcohol abuse. So alcohol use when we're not even going to accept their application. There are so many potential pitfalls with this, and I don't know why we want to say that, for instance, if there's a veteran who really does need assistance, and part of the reason that they may need assistance is because they have a substance abuse problem, are we going to be turning those people away?
I'd strike it.
Yeah, I agree with you because it's subjective to Mark and Gary, and that's not fair to them either.
Any other questions? All righty. Let's move on. New business. One thing that I have is discussion of how often do we need to meet. Some of the other committees meet quarterly. Let's see, retirement, 457 boards. And we could also meet if we need to, say, if Amber came back with a suggestion for this next month, we can still call a special meeting. So I'm going to suggest, if somebody wants to make a motion, that we meet quarterly unless we need a special meeting, if that's okay.
I think meeting quarterly is not our answer right now. Maybe every other month. So that'll be 6 times a year.
What do you call that, bi-monthly? Or is that twice a month?
No, every other month.
Yeah, but there's a term for that.
It's bi-monthly.
It's bi-monthly.
Bi-weekly is every.
No, every 2.
Bi-monthly.
But our committee is just, no, not that old.
Junior lieutenant.
So I think we should start out slow and then reevaluate in the future.
I agree with that in the sense that it may be difficult to get people to attend a special meeting if they're not scheduling it into their agenda.
If we knew far enough ahead, say a couple. Yeah. So did anyone want to make a motion?
I make a motion that the committee meet bi-monthly.
Any support?
Second?
Any further discussion?
Starting in November.
Remember, it will be next month.
That means December, we don't meet because that's Christmas.
So we're meeting in October.
No, November.
Well, I think you're saying we start the program in November, which means we skip December.
Yeah.
Or else we start it now, which means.
We start it now, which means we meet in November and then January.
Okay, so
Yeah, immediately.
And then November would be the next meeting.
Right.
We have a special meeting. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, any other new business? I don't know, Mark, do you have any other stuff to report. I don't know, anything with the name on the monument out front?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further on that yet. And just a quick update that Gary's completed his training. The National Association of County Veteran Service Officers was the only person providing accreditation training at this time. MVAA will pick up again next year, 3 times a year, I think I saw the notice. So we're currently working on getting him one into the VA's Office of the General Counsel database, working on getting him accredited to MVAA and American Legion and the other veteran service organizations. And some of those will flow through the National Association. They have MOUs, whatever that will flow. So some of them will get taken care of automatically, but we have to petition the other ones separately. So, and I've already completed the paperwork for those 2. He already has administrative access to the software we use, the state software we use. The next step will be getting him access to the VA software.
Are there any other veteran service officers that come into the county building or anywhere in Bay County except for the VA? Otherwise, they'd have to go if they didn't come here. If any other service officers besides you in Bay County? We used to have the Marines come in, and there's nobody else
No,
coming in.
not at this time. I know the American Legion had asked, had inquired about that, and I know if that was being worked. But at this time, there are no departmental service officers that come into Bay County.
Well, you've got a couple for the American Legion that travel in different counties, and they could, if there was a requirement, come to Bay County. But the state, the American Legion at state level does not deem it necessary because we have an adequate service officer.
And that's how we received the request. It was actually after COVID, the one service officer who did travel between Bay County and the Northern County had requested to use our space because he couldn't get space at the VA because they weren't allowing service officers at the annex facility, so, which is where his normal, so. But he has since moved on to another position so that his position is currently, I believe, open, so.
Was that, what's his name?
Eric.
Is there a guy named Tommy inside?
Yes.
Ready? Any other questions? Yeah, the other thing I was going to bring up about Gary, I'm sure Gary is on the front lines of these requests, so I think we should check with him. I imagine you do every now and then to see where there's gray areas. I'm sure he runs into the gray areas and for the requests for funds, relief funds. So.
Oh, for emergency relief?
Emergency relief, yeah.
Yeah, we talk about it often, and with Craig, we've discussed various, and we know we're waiting on, we're currently operating under what we were operating on somewhat, and then we're still, we receive input on, with increasing the amounts, and then I know that they're still working on the remainder of what are the rules, what rules are we setting in stone-ish that we're going to follow, so.
Sometimes the stone is a little gray, though, the gray stone.
Well, and that's, I think, part of it is it's great to have the guidelines, but it's like, can we, if necessary, somebody's home burns and they lose everything, what do we, so, but those are just one of the many things.
Thank you. Any other questions from Bart?
Yeah, I got one question.
Yeah.
We discussed once upon a time having Gary get involved in the scheduling for the drivers. Did that drop off the face of the earth?
It did not. Actually, that transfer of the phone is taking place as soon as it comes back to Bay County, which we expect to be Thursday, Friday this week.
The phone's gone?
No, the person who had the phone got sick while the phone was outside of Bay County. She was still scheduling. So the phone is on its way back to, and Fred is supposed to turn it over either Thursday or Friday back to us.
So at that point in time, Gary's going to take over the scheduling?
Yes.
Any other new business? Any announcements? Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to bring up that I attended on September 11th a Blue Star Memorial unveiling right at the entrance of the community center. If you drive by that way off of Henry, is it, I believe? Yeah,
Off of
I believe.
Henry, yeah.
Off of Henry.
Off
They,
Henry.
it's very tastefully done. They did a really good job. It was done by the Valley Garden Club. And so, yeah, Mr. Barsha, myself, Mr. Begic, there were other entities that were invited, and it was, they did a nice job. And
The entrance there.
so if you drive over on that side of town, drive through. It turned out really nice. They've got another project that they're working on, but seem to be very active right now with trying to update some of those areas down on that side of the river.
Kennedy Drive?
You know, all can have a stone. Just give them some money, they'll put your stone out there. It's pretty nice. We stopped by the other day, it's really nice. We also had the VVA Chapter 494 had a POW MIA ceremony last Friday, which was the actual POW MIA day. It's the third Friday in September. In the past, we've had it with the River of Time, but didn't have the River of Time, so we had it on the actual day, and had a good turnout. We had smoking of the memorial. Jim Adams, if you don't know, Jim was one of our VVA members, pretty active member, passed away recently. And they have a large group of, people that work with him. His wife came by and she did the table ceremony, if you ever, the setting of the table. It was probably pretty emotional for her since she had just lost her husband. But, and then we had the color guard was there, and so it was a pretty good turnout for short notice. We didn't decide actually till Sunday before that we were going to have it done. So.
I had a number of people approach me at the Legion post confused because of the change in.
Yeah. So if they have River of Time next year, we'll probably do it with the River of Time because we have the reenactors that come in, and it's a pretty large ceremony then. Usually have a speaker, Abraham Lincoln or somebody come by and talk.
Was Jim the gentleman that ran it every year?
Jim Adam,
He's in the past while. I didn't know
that's
that.
way out. Yep. We have our VVA convention coming up in November in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's a long road trip. I'm considering going though. We'll see. We're trying to figure, the VVA is trying to figure out how long we're going to be the VVA because the Vietnam veterans are getting older for the next group. So we may have to rename ourselves the, whatever, or join another group like the Legion or the, hopefully we'll be better accepted by the Legion this time. It was a little testy before.
The Bay County Military Honor Guard is looking for volunteers. They lost 5 veterans to COVID. So spread the word. You don't have to be a veteran to join, to volunteer, but we need the help.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other announcements? A motion to adjourn is always in order.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.